So my name is Joey Simonek, and this is my internship journey. Um, let's see. It is a little, it's going to be a lot. So I'm going to try and go fast, but also still be thorough. So I'll try my best. So a little bit of my background. I graduated from TCC with an associate's in biology. And that photo there is me graduating. I was the only person walking for my degree, actually. So that's the reason why I'm the only one standing. And then I'm going to be starting at University of Washington, Tacoma for a bachelor's in environmental science. And actually, that's going to be in a couple weeks now. And why did I choose this internship? In my cover letter for the internship, I wrote, the internship emulates a facet of what makes me excited about the field of environmental science and the intersectionality of urban living, or the intersectionality of urban living and the environment. And it still holds true even finishing this internship, and it's been such an awesome journey. And so we did have community partners a part of this internship. I got to work with the University of Washington Tacoma on the microforest project that's going on right now. The microforest project is formatted to emulate the Miyawaki method, which is a process of planting dense native and biodiverse ecosystems within a very small amount of space. It was started by these two students that I highlighted here and with support from professors at the University of Washington Tacoma as well. Um, my job was to source some of those distributors for the nurseries that we're planning on doing our first planting in October. And I will be continuing this project while I'm at UW-T, which is really awesome. So now on to the actual bulk of this presentation, the Western Red Cedar Dieback survey that I did for my independent project. So we'll go ahead and get started with the history and background. So just a quick little intro into the Western Red Cedar. This is some photos that I took while inventorying, just showing some of the kind of identifiers that you can look for. An interesting fact about Western Red Cedars is that they're not a true cedar. I didn't know that going into this, so that was pretty cool. This is just kind of their growing zone that we see the Western Red Cedars in the most. I thought this would be a nice way to highlight kind of where we're looking at. And then, of course, I wanted to also highlight the indigenous connection to the Western Red Cedar, just to really highlight the importance of this tree. These trees were called the Tree of Life by indigenous tribes of the Pacific Northwest. The tree is used very intentionally to elongate the health and use. And for example, stripping the tree bark on only one side at a time to not kill the tree, and only using what is needed while the tree is still alive. And it's, yeah. Go ahead, and then we'll go ahead and get started with defining the problem. Western red cedar dieback. Western red cedars have been showing signs of decline across the Pacific Northwest, largely linked to climate change and shifting growing zones. These changes themselves can be detrimental to the health of trees, but can additionally exacerbate issues such as pests and fungi/bacteria. And as you can see here, these are some interesting infographics about shifting planting zones that we're currently experiencing. And then dieback is the progressive decline of foliage on trees that can be linked to a multitude of issues, one largely being stress. You can see right here, this tree off to the right is a tree that I found at McKinley Park in Tacoma. As you can see, there's quite a bit of dieback, and there's, of course, a lot of foliage that even if there is some green, it's not likely going to be holding on very long. I'm not going to dwell too much on this just for time's sake, but these are some examples of some western red cedar afflictions. We're looking at cedar leaf blight, western red cedar borer beetles, cedar bark beetles, and then root and heart rot fungi. Those are some of those pictures there. And then I'll go ahead and go into the method. So I used a few iNaturalist projects altogether, but I took all of those and we put them all into one single Western Red Cedar or iNaturalist project, the Western Red Cedar dieback map to analyze. We were looking at the tree equity score for heat disparity. I found 4 parks in both warm and cool locations, and that would be the highlighted parks that you see there with warm and cool urban heat locations. I went to 7 of the 8 parks because uh, we already had community scientists working with Point Defiance, so it would have been kind of redundant for me to also inventory in that location. And you can see here, so the top left is going to be uh, all of the trees a part of that Western Red Cedar dieback map. And then the Tacoma specific location is going to be highlighted on the right. And then we have the tree equity scores highlighted of each of the locations that I specifically looked at. And I'll go into the reason why there's only 6 there in a moment. And then those on the bottom right are going to be all the trees that I inventoried. I'm not going to go into this. This is just the observation fields. If you're watching the video, you can pause it here. And then we'll go into the results. So the resulting inventory numbers, there was a total of 1,498 Western Red Cedars inside that Western Red Cedar dieback map, of the total 4,009 inventoried from Canada to California and from Washington over to Montana. Um, of the part that I specifically inventoried, we're looking at Wapato, Snake Lake, McKinley, and China Lake in the warm locations. And you can see those highlight with the notes that I made for each one of those locations. And then the cool locations were Puget Creek, Swan Creek, Point Defiance, and then Catherine Urick. Both China Lake and Catherine Urick had no Western Red Cedars when I was going through it. Um, so they weren't included in that map that I was talking about previously. And then down at the bottom, there's just going to be the metadata. The metadata I pulled from the tree equity score. Um, and I pulled the Washington Environmental Health Disparity Rank from the Washington Health. Um, I can't remember the website off the top of my head right now, but from that website that I can find later if anybody's interested. And so this is going to be a dieback analysis per inventory location. You can see that I highlighted the amount altogether and then just the percentage of the trees that make up those locations. You can see that Snake Lake, Wapato, and McKinley have a pretty high range of variation between healthy to dead. And as well as Swan Creek, surprisingly, even though that one was classified as a cool area, it does seem like there are some environmental effectors that also were influencing the decline. And then there's that chart that I used. So then the Tacoma heat data, you can see right here, the map at the bottom right is the afternoon temperatures from a heat wave that was recorded in July 2018. Temperatures were collected at 3 times throughout the day by Portland State University. I overlaid the tree inventories on QGIS and cross-referenced the temperature readings to get an individual temperature range for each Western Red Cedar, shown in the picture on the top right there. And thank you to Joey for helping me with that. I do not know GIS really at all, so it was really helpful to have him help me out there. And yeah, so that's the information there. So the heat data, what we then I then took that data and then broke it down a little bit further. This is the entire breakdown of the 1,498 Western Red Cedars in Tacoma. And then this is just basically showing a correlative relationship with higher temperature ranges having more declining Western Red Cedars and lower temperature ranges having more healthy Western Red Cedars. And I say correlative because as most things when it comes to trees, there are so many different factors that can be included there. So this is just kind of an interesting map to show that, as you can see, the red and orange are going to be the higher temperatures on this dieback range, um, or this graph over here. And as you can see this, as we decline, as we get higher in unhealthy canopies, there's going to be more in that zone of those hotter temperatures. And then the dieback percentage here is just, we're looking at percentages instead of percent ranges. It just kind of gave us a better idea of what we're looking at. And then this is just the continued heat data breakdown for the parks. This is the last one of the results, so I'm almost done. Um, the temperatures here, as you can see, Point Defiance, Puget Creek, and Swan Creek. Again, like I said, Swan Creek was an interesting outlier when it comes to these cool range areas, quote unquote. Um, and you can see right here that it actually was in the hotter area with like Snake Lake, McKinley, and Wapato. And then we can see over here the temperature ranges. Again, like I said, that correlative relationship with 79% of the tree, or 79 degrees being kind of the median temperature for that 0% or healthy tree. And then it kind of just going up in temperature as we get closer and closer to, or higher amounts of decline. And then just, yeah, the concluding thoughts. So I'm not going to go too much into this, but these are just some interesting points that I found as I was going through the Western Red Cedar content in general. Um, Everybody put in their data differently, so that was kind of a difficult thing. There's so much data to go through that even by the time I finished going through it, I still felt like there was more to be done. And then comments on the locations. The trees closer to the water or inside gulches seemed healthier than trees that were like near roads or out in the open, which I just thought was an interesting remark that I noticed. Again, could be nothing, but it's interesting nonetheless. Um, and yeah, thank you. So funding for this project was provided by the USDA's Forest Service Inflation Reduction Act Fund. And additional thank yous to Joey, Zay, Fig, Zarina, and Tim at WSU for making this internship possible. My friends and family for listening to me nerd out about trees, and the teachers at TCC, Kristen Harrison and Sean Henderson. I would have not known about this opportunity if it wasn't for them. And then there are the tons of references I have. And that's it.